What comes to mind when someone brings up child marriage?
Cultural relativism and child rights.
What's the image that comes up?
Um, Generally, just a very young girl in a oversized kind of wedding dress or gown, and like the wedding shawl or whatever they wear on their heads, and it's a very grotesque image, I think.
What do you think are the reasons behind child marriage?
I think it's mainly tradition or misinterpretation of tradition. So I think that's the main reason or the cause behind it. And poverty for sure. Yeah, I think in the poorest areas that's where it's most common because people want to get rid of the responsibilities of having a child or having to take care of the child. That's what I think.
Do you think it can be stopped, and if so, how?
I don't know. I mean, it would require years. The question is for me, why I said cultural relativism at the very beginning is whether it should be stopped. I mean, it's been around for ages. Whether I'm against it or not is irrelevant to my answer. But I think whether it should be stopped, I mean, why stop it? Who says it should be stopped? It's acceptable for some societies, but for others it's not. This is kind of more my conspiracy theorist, yani, but that's what I think. Can it be stopped? That question goes, I mean, the same answer applies to everything traditional or cultural in every society. It would require education and a lot of funding and basically economic prosperity. In those three cases, maybe it could be stopped. But then again, I think of the question of whether it should be stopped or not.
Right, thank you. What comes to mind when someone brings up early marriage?
The first thing that comes to mind is a little girl who's probably crying and she has a pale face and she's holding her Barbie doll. And you can tell that she's really depressed because she's being forced into something that she really does not have a say in. She's being forced into adulthood and later on motherhood. She's going to have children. She's going to have to take care of a household and she's only a child.
What do you think are the reasons behind child marriage?
I think most child marriages occur because the family is poor, so they can't really afford financially to take care of the child. So maybe most of their children, let's say if they have 5 children, they would force 3 or 2 children into early marriage so that they don't really have to take care of the expenses. Also, it has to deal with education. يعني, any family with a high level of education would never force the children into early marriage, not at least before the age of 25 or so.
Do you think it can be stopped, and if so, how?
It's very unlikely for child marriage to stop in developing countries, especially when there's a really really low level of education. There يعني, the ignorance level or يعني, let's say the ignorance level is really high and families are not educated well enough to know that يعني, marriage is something that is consensual and something that is voluntary, and that you only get married when you feel that you want to be when you feel responsible emotionally and physically that you want to be involved with someone for a long period of time. And it can only be stopped with awareness campaigns, and you have to target a lot of people so that they can learn and they can actually be educated well enough that marriage in general as a concept is something for the child to decide and not for the parents.